Hello, I'm Omid Djalili and this is Please Tell Me a Story, the game where storytelling goes wrong. I'm joined by Felicity Ward, Nabil Abdul Rashid, Helen Bauer, Megan Jane Crabb and Mark Thomas. It's the final episode of the series. How are we feeling, guys? You probably know how it works by now, but in case you've made the curious decision to start with the last episode of the season, allow me to explain. Each week, one of us tells a story. We tell it to each other again and again and again. Based on how it's gone so far, nonsense ensues. That sounds like a cock being rubbed out. Bringing up the rear in the big blue storytelling chair, it's Felicity Ward.
It's this guy.
Felicity, is your story a big finish to our anthology?
I don't think so. I would say a fizzle is more of an accurate description.
But we will edit it for you.
I do not doubt that.
Remember, if you're listening to the show, you can also watch us by searching for Please Tell Me a Story on YouTube. So for one last time then, let's do this. Felicity, you'll kick things off by telling your story to Megan. I'll see you at the end, guys. I have a good feeling about this one. So, the rest of us, get out!
Please tell me a story.
So, our final storyteller is Felicity. Now listen up, Megan.
Felicity, please tell me a story.
Megan, this is my story. Okay, for the purposes of this story, absolutely no names have been changed. It was the year of the Y2K bug, the year 2000K. I was 19. I was going to be a camp counsellor at a place called Camp Mariah in upstate New York in a town called Fishkill.
Bum, 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 bum.
Oh! Now, is it weirder that the town was called Fishkill or that it was Camp Mariah, as in Mariah Carey's camp?
Stop it.
It was the Mariah Carey, and I was told that she visited at the end of each encampment every year. So I was going to meet Mariah fucking Carey.
This is like the real-life Camp Rock.
Exactly. Well, kind of. We'll get to that. So you would think, oh, it's Mariah Carey's camp. Everyone must get paid so well. Lol, 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 lol. I bought my own flight to America from Australia and received, for the whole time, $960 US. And that was 2 lots of 3 weeks of work. In those 3 weeks, I got one 24-hour period off and one evening off. So $960 full payment for 6 weeks translates to 95 cents an hour. That's for 24-hour childcare.
Oh, Mariah.
I'm 19, right? If I went a year before, that would actually be breaking child labour laws. As it was, I was 19 and it was just slave labour. Namaste. Camp was quite tricky. It was very intense. From 9 o'clock until midday, I was a teacher's assistant at the pool, a swimming teacher's assistant, right? Then we'd have lunch from 12 to 1, and that was with my boys from the cabin that I looked after. And then from 1 till 2 was time off and also time to do a massive poo. Because there was, we were looking after kids, I was eating 2 meals every single meal. I was doing doubles and all of the camp counsellors got to a point where we did start talking about our shits, because once I did a poo that was as big as my forearm. That became quite regular. It was massive. I know. So then after that, 2 till 5, I was a music assistant and then cabin leader from 5 p.m. till 9 a.m. the next morning.
Is all of this detail necessary? Like you want me to remember it, right?
No, I'm just giving you a vibe.
Cool.
I'm just giving you a vibe. You can actually drop whatever you like of that. It's fine.
Amazing.
Basically, my only mission while I was there was to avoid my only phobia, which was moths. It's the only thing that I'm afraid of, right? That's all I am.
Why?
Well, because when I was younger, we had a garage, and in summer you would turn on the light and then these big powdery bats, they're called bogon moths, would come and flap around my face, and I hated it and I felt scared. Moths can go fuck themselves, and when they get there, they can call their mum and go, oh, I've got to go fuck myself again. Sorry, I won't be back for a while. That's how I feel about moths.
Cool, good to know.
Got it?
Yeah, got it.
So I'm 19. The eldest campers, were 16. So I had very little authority over any of them. There was a fish that bit one of the kids on the nipple. It got called the nipple fish. In our cabin, there was only a wooden partition between me and my co-counsellor and the kids, and they were 10 or 11-year-old boys.
Ooh.
And I, more than once, heard them exploring themselves.
Oh, dear.
And when they did that, I went and spoke to an older counsellor called Perry, and he said, you know who they were whacking off to, right? That sound effect went a lot longer than any of us wanted to.
I feel physically nauseous.
Yeah, imagine listening to it live.
Bless you.
Bless me.
How is therapy going?
She's still in there. She's been in there for a while. The thing is, I didn't want to deal with masturbation. I just wanted to meet Mariah Carey, obviously. So we get to the second encampment, right? Not a whisper about Mariah so far. So maybe she was just a fantasy. In my cabin, I had 5 boys. Jimmy Lee, Alvin, Julio, Jamal, and Ernie. And I had nothing to offer. I was just a kid from a national park. The only valuable thing I could teach them was how to float. Much harder than you think. Really hard to teach someone else to float. Us counsellors, when we went into the second encampment, went immediately stir crazy because we realised we were going to go through it again. And we lashed out in the only way we could, which is we started a rumour that Michael Jackson was dead. Now, I don't know why we did that. Probably because there was no internet or phones at camp, and so the kids or the counsellors couldn't fact check. And I was only 19, and so I didn't quite understand the phrase duty of care. So we did tell lots of 10-year-olds that Michael Jackson was dead. Some of the kids didn't believe us, others weren't sure, and some did start crying. Not ideal. So we got them quiet with some stolen chocolate chip biscuits and made them promise they wouldn't sue us, which was brought up. We get to the last night at the end of the encampment, the 6 weeks, and I'm broken. The kids think I'm lame. I couldn't teach them anything. They still couldn't float at the end of 3 weeks. And then it came to lights out, and there was a moth in the cabin.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I thought you were going to say Mariah Carey.
There she stood, the butterfly herself.
In the cabin.
In the cabin.
Floating above you.
We thought it was a creaky door. It was just her whistle. Yeah. So there's a moth in the cabin, right? And these boys are terrified of a moth. I am also terrified of a moth, but I'm like, guys, you've witnessed gun violence before. This is just a moth. And they're like, no, get it away from us, get it away from us. So this was my time. This was my redemption. And so I took a pillow and I channeled all my rage and my underpayment and my unwanted sexual noises I had to listen to. The lack of tea, the giant shits, and I poured them all into this one act. And I ran at the moth and I screamed and I squished it under the pillow. And then we all screamed in terror as we jumped on the moth corpse under it. And then we kicked the pillow outside and we all slept sitting up. And then a hero comes along with the strength. I am sorry to say that Mariah Carey never turned up that year.
What the fuck?
And nobody told us why. And you know what's even worse? The spooky thing is Michael Jackson did die just 9 years later.
Wow.
And that is my story.
So the story is you killed Michael Jackson.
And a moth.
And I think Mariah Carey was the moth.
Oh my God. That had never occurred to me.
OK, so it's a tale that doesn't paint Mariah Carey in a great light, or the campers, or moths for that matter. Lots of detail in there. Let's see how Megan, Helen and Mark manage.
Megan,
Helen,
Mark,
please tell me.
your story
Nabil, I will.
This is Felicity's story.
that she told to Megan.
Who told it to Helen, who told it to me.
Let's do it.
We begin in a town called Fishkill.
Fish kill.
Kill fish.
Bum, ba, bum, 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 bum.
And a young Helen is 19 and all she wants to do...
Helen's the name of Felicity in this. Wowzers. What a start. What a start.
I'm looking at you.
Young Helen is 19 in Fishkill. Okay, I get it. Helen, listen, a young 19...
You're not in this story, okay?
I'm not, I hope
Stop
not.
making it about you.
Thank God, okay.
Felicity is 19.
Yeah.
She wants to go to Camp America. She doesn't go to Camp America. She, however, does get accepted into Camp Mariah. And it is what it sounds like.
Camp Mariah, as in Mariah Carey.
It's a summer camp that Mariah Carey put together.
All I want for Christmas is you.
She gets paid very poorly.
Oh, no.
She works for 6 weeks and she makes the equivalent of 95 cents an hour. Wow. She is also bunked with a bunch of preteen boys. And at night, there is but a plank of wood separating her bed from their bed.
Each night, they begin their playful dance of adolescent self-indulgence and masturbate furiously.
Oh, come on. That's the best sound effect. Okay.
All right, in my ear as well, bruv.
Oh, no, I'm sorry about that.
Just on repeat, just constant. Wax on, wax
Polishing
off.
their shoes?
Polishing their shoes, polishing anything they can get their hands on.
Wait, all of them?
Yeah, all of them.
Knob time, it's knob time at Camp Mariah.
The room in the morning smelt like a cheese mortuary.
And when she went to complain to someone, like the advisor for the camp, the advisor says, well, you know who they're masturbating over, don't you?
Oh my God, are you serious?
I'm very serious. It's horrible, isn't it?
Jesus, okay.
Absolutely horrible. And the whole time, Felicity's feeling like she doesn't have much to offer. These boys who she's bunked with, you know, they've been places, they've seen things. And all she can do is try and teach them how to do a backfloat in the pond.
Obviously.
She wished to show the children how they should survive some backward fall.
And in the pond, there was a fish that bit someone's nipple and they called it nipple fish.
Okay. If you're doing a backflow, how did nipple fish get to the nipple?
She's a very bad teacher.
Okay, she's a really bad
terrible
backfloater.
teacher.
Yeah.
She's basically just teaching them how to
Nipple fish
drown.
is constantly on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Back up on the nipple fish.
No, that is actually the whole thing. Like, I haven't skipped anything there. Someone got bit on the nipple by a fish and they called it nipple fish.
And she was eating, 2 meals at every meal, so her shits became the size of her forearm.
But one thing you need to know about Felicity, she is terrified of moths.
Me too, they're ungodly. There's something ungodly about them and butterflies. You know that to turn into it from the pupa, they liquidize their bodies and it still has memory and can feel pain and then it turns into a butterfly or moth?
That's incredible.
Okay.
I have nothing but respect for moths.
You are wrong, madam. Wrong.
Right, well, you and Felicity are both terrified of moths.
And then every evening, all she can hear is the wanky boys, and just constantly, and it's stressing her out.
One night, there was a noise, and in flew a giant moth.
So huge, bigger than one of her shits.
No,
I just assumed that was the sound effect.
It's the sound of me missing out giant chunks of the story. So she took the pillow that was next to her and she channeled all of her rage about being underpaid and about the wanking boys.
Yeah. She's so angry. Nipple fish has upset her.
The shits the size of her forearm.
Her pay at this camp is 95 cents an hour. It's not good enough. It's not good enough.
And she pummeled the moth with a pillow and they all jumped on top of it. And then Mariah Carey... showed up.
Mariah Carey walks in.
Actual, genuine Mariah Carey.
To the camp.
Okay.
And told Felicity that animal cruelty isn't accepted at Camp Mariah and that she had to leave. And then she was kicked out of the camp and she never even got paid.
Felicity left and she didn't even get paid.
And she left without pay. And that is exactly how it went.
I mean, the fuck? Nothing in the story was relevant to anything else in the story. And the sad thing is, I genuinely believe that's how it came from the original source.
I mean, it is. I mean, basically, all I had to work with was flanging teen, fish, and flapping moths.
Fucking hell.
Michael Jackson written out and Mariah very much written in. Nabil's up next.
Nabil, please tell me a story.
Sure. This is Felicity's story as told by Helen, who told Megan, who told Mark, who told me.
Not entirely the right name order there.
Right. So, when Felicity was 17, she really wanted to go to America. Because she wanted to see America and she wanted to help young kids who needed help. Because, I mean, America is so full of if you were going to think of a country where you need to go and
help underprivileged kids.
Yeah, America is definitely the place to go. And obviously she wanted to make money. Again, there's a bunch of incoherence here. But initially it was Camp America, then Killfish. Then it later became Camp Mariah, as in...
Camp Mariah Carey.
Mariah Carey.
All right.
Yeah. And yes, the movements were part of the story. So this story is so bollocks that I'm trying to do it. I'm not even adding anything, really. Like that's.
He didn't love the story, but Nabil's pretty much on the money here. Let's cut to the moth.
And it's then mentioned that she has a phobia of moths. She's afraid of moths because why not? And a moth flies into the room while she's there, and she thinks should she run out, but she can't because apparently this room, the only way out is to run through the furious masturbators, right? And she didn't want to get caught with any stray shots. So I don't know. I guess it's just weird for a 17-year-old girl to run through a room of masturbating teenage boys from a moth. So she decided she was going to face her fears. So she attacked the moth furiously, almost as furiously as the masturbators were masturbating.
At the same time, she's running through their dorm.
No, she didn't run through their dorm. She stayed in her room, but she was attacking.
Okay.
And then the door opened, and none other than
Mariah Carey herself
walks into the room and says, "We don't condone violence towards animals," and walks out. And Felicity was sent home without pay. And that's exactly how it goes.
I have very little reaction to that, other than to pick up on what you said. What do the furious masturbators have to do with the story? We could have just left that bit out. I can see why we're keeping it in now, though. The sound effect is magnificent.
And the nipple fish.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. I feel I haven't evolved at all.
Come to think of it, why was the nipple fish relevant? And the masturbation? Let's get Felicity back to hear from Omid.
Omid, please tell me a story.
Okay, this is the story, which I believe is your story told to Megan.
Tis.
Yeah, and then who told Helen, where I think maybe things may have gone wrong, who then told Mark, who would have made things worse, who then told Nabil, who told me.
I'm excited.
The story is, you are 17 years old.
Sure.
Okay, all right. And you want to go to America. Because you feel you would like to help underprivileged children. And of all the countries in the world, why you would choose America is extraordinary. So you've got a choice of places to go, certain summer camps where you're going to help underprivileged children. There seems to be many different ones you've done. You've done some stints with a couple of places were mentioned. I can't quite remember off the top of my head where they are, but there is a Mariah Carey type camp. It's Camp Mariah, I
Yes.
believe. Okay, Camp Mariah, which I didn't think was a thing. I thought that was a distortion, but that's true. Camp Mariah is a place where you're going to be there as a counsellor, 17-year-old counsellor, and the accommodation you're given is next to a couple of boys when there's a very thin wall, and you can hear them furiously masturbating. That sounds like a cock being rubbed out for me, but
That's a mistake cock.
it's a mistake cock. Okay, all right. So the next day you have to do something to help the boys with floating in water, and one of them seems to float on his front. And while he's floating on his front, he's nipped by fish on his nipples. Okay. At this point, Nabil did say, I don't know what the masturbating was about or how relevant that was to the story, but it is something that you you had to deal with the kid who had his nipples bitten. And then the story moves on and you have a phobia of moths. And a moth comes into your room and starts flying around you, and you want to run away, but you don't really want to run through the masturbating boys, who I believe are still masturbating.
That's called a cry wank, I believe.
That's a cry wank,
That is a
okay.
cry wank.
All right, so you're going to have to deal with this moth by yourself. So you start attacking this moth in your room, and at which point the whole room is shaking. The room is shaking, and I didn't miss out that when the boys were masturbating, they were shaking as well. They're masturbating, so there was shaking. So people know that you're doing something untoward to a moth, at which point Mariah Carey herself shows up and tells you off and says, we do not condone violence to animals. And then you had to leave in disgrace. You were not paid. And to this day, you're bearing those scars, and you've been speaking to a therapist about it, and you've actually exhausted therapist's time. So you've brought this story here to see if we can get some answers. And frankly, there are no answers. And that's the story of how it went.
I mean, this has got Helen Bauer written all over it.
I believe so.
It was actually pretty close to the story until Mariah Carey walked in. Let's get the gang back in and see who's the culprit. Count us in, please, Helen.
3, 2, 1.
Felicity, please tell us your story.
This is my story. Now, for the purposes of this story, absolutely no names have been changed. It was the year of the Y2K bug. I was 19 and I was going to be a camp counsellor at a place called Camp America in a place called Fishkill in upstate New York.
Felicity tells us her story with the Star-Spangled Banner, music video trivia and everything else. A query from Mark, though, about the infamous nipple fish.
What did bite it?
It was a fish.
It's just there was no specific. I'm just trying to find out the specific.
I don't even know if it was a sea snake or a fish.
Were
I
you
don't
meant
know.
to be teaching them how to float?
Yeah, how to back float.
I was teaching them how to float. That comes later.
Thank God, okay.
Yes. In our cabins, I was looking after boys, right? So we had a wooden partition between the co-counsellor, me and Raquel, and then you could walk around it. We were in the same cabin. It wasn't next door. We were in the same cabin. They were 10 or 11-year-old boys, and I heard them exploring themselves. It goes for so long.
That does sound like DIY.
It does. It's like you're just sanding the walls before you put the top coat on.
I was thinking it sounds very dry.
It does sound dry.
Absolutely right.
Fire.
It's like at the end of this is the noise you hear. No! It's because it's a baby cry that makes me so upset. So I'd heard that a couple of nights in a row, and then I went to one of the older camp counsellors, Perry, and I went up to him and I told him, and his feedback was, you know who he's probably whacking off to, right? Unhelpful. Not the feedback I wanted or anticipated. I didn't want to deal with masturbation. I just wanted to meet Mariah Carey. In my cabin, I have 5 boys. I have Jimmy Lee, Alvin, Julio, Jamal, and Ernie. And I feel useless. These boys are funny, charming, smart. They're all inner city kids. They're all from financially disadvantaged backgrounds. A lot of them have seen gun violence, have been involved in it. They've got a parent in jail. They're incredible children. And I am just a kid from a national park. The only valuable thing I could teach them was how to float. Which, by the way, is much harder than you think. So we go into the second encampment and all the counsellors who are not from the States just go immediately stir crazy. We go mad.
Oh my God.
And so we lashed out in the only way we could. We started a rumour that Michael Jackson was dead.
What?
How did you miss that out?
Who missed that?
The first person.
Try not to think about him at all. So
That's fair enough.
Fair.
But
Fair.
still, a rumour that he's dead is a good rumour for you then.
At what stage in his career was this?
The year
9
2000.
years before he dies.
And so have we had Baby Dangle yet?
That's probably around Baby Dangle time, is it
For
not?
sure, around Baby Dangle
But
time.
what
Yeah.
a remarkable thing to start spreading.
Some of the children didn't believe us, others weren't sure, and some did cry. Some of the counsellors and some of the children. Fair enough. But it was all fine. We got them quiet with some stolen chocolate biscuits and they did agree not to sue us. And then it came to lights out and I went to turn the lights out and there was a moth and the kids were terrified. These kids who have seen gun violence, these children from broken homes were fucking terrified of a moth. I'm like, come on, guys, it's just a moth, even though inside I am dying.
Yeah.
And I thought, you know what? This is my moment of redemption. So I bite down and deal with it. I grab a pillow, I take a deep breath, and I channel all my rage, my lack of money, my massive shits, my inability to teach these kids how to float, the unwanted sexual noises, the disappearance of my tea, my coffee, my sugar, and I run at this moth with a pillow, screaming, and I squish it, and then we all come over and we jump on the pillow and the corpse of the moth, and then we kick the pillow outside, and then we all go to sleep sitting up. And then the hero comes along. Mariah Carey never came that year.
No!
She never came and we never found out why. And the spooky thing about Michael Jackson, he did die only 9 years later. I don't know how Mariah came.
I think we've got a confession to make from Megan, I think, because I was definitely told that Mariah came at the end.
it was a long story and I wanted to spice it up at the end.
It was a long story, was it?
Am I going to be punished?
No.
Your story was about Dance Dance Revolution. You saying
Sickest arcade game of all
mine
time.
needed spice?
Mine had Spice Girls in
Mine
it.
had Peril.
Good point. Peril, Spice Girls.
She had.
Don't go to her defence. I've known you for 15 years, motherfucker.
Thanks, Mark.
She was wrong.
Thank you.
Well, there you go. That's it for this season. We'll be back with another season of madness. Please tune in to Please Tell Me a Story.
Thank you, everyone. That was a hoot.
Lovely
Thank you for looking
stuff.
after us.
I can't believe you.
Mariah Carey story.
Please tell me a story.